Jeremy Conrad over at MCU Cosmic just ran a really spicy scoop about how Marvel's Ultimatum is coming to the MCU. Well, I sat down with the man himself and asked him a few questions, clarifying this crazy scoop. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button like the frickin' Hulk, and let's get right into this video. I'm just going to go right into the interview with Jeremy Conrad. And again, thanks, Jeremy, for doing this interview. All right, guys, so we are here with Jeremy Conrad of MCU Cosmic. Jeremy, thanks so much for being here, man. Saw your scoop earlier today about Ultimatum, and I'm very intrigued. And so I think the best place to start is, like, maybe can you tell us a little bit more about the scoop, whatever you can tell us? Where does it come from, and how confident are you in it?
Well, yeah, because there has been, I've noticed, like, on places on Reddit and stuff, there's been confusion about it. It comes from, okay, so let me just back up a little bit. Every time you see a website, including my site, report on things like Marvel's casting a vague character with a code name or age range, every time you see a website reporting on something like that, those come from what are called grids, casting grids, production grids. Casting ones are much more common. But there are even just production grids that go out there that just list the production name, the company making it, whoever's producing it. Sometimes if there's more information, who's writing it. Sometimes there'll be a log line. But the earlier it is, the less information there is on there. So, and these go out. A lot of people get access to these. And it also, I've seen it in the past, it's created drama between sites when sites think they're the only ones who get access to a grid, and another site finds it before them and runs it, stuff like that. But that's where these sort of things come from. So that's where Ultimatum comes from. There's a production grid out there listing the production of, it's called actually Marvel's Ultimatum, much like Marvel's Black Widow or Marvel's Avengers. They use the Marvel's title a lot. I think Eternals might be using it, or it might not, but I know Black Widow did. I know there's some also, they did some copyrights like Marvel's Blade and stuff like that. So it's being listed as Marvel's Ultimatum. It's by Marvel Studios, produced by Feige. Right now, we don't know if it's going to be Disney Plus or if it's going to be a movie. And after what went on with Hawkeye, where Hawkeye was originally thought to maybe be a solo Hawkeye movie, but then as Disney Plus came about, it evolved into that Disney Plus series. It's hard to say these days what's going to be a series and what's going to be a movie, because it's all the same umbrella. It's all the same people being working on it. It's the same production company. It's the same production values, same type of budget as a movie. So it's hard to say what medium it will take, but it's something, it's a production grid that's out there listing it as Marvel's Ultimatum, produced by Feige, by Marvel Studios. So that's where this comes from. Now, they don't do those grids for, like, if a character were to appear or a group of characters were to appear in the show, they wouldn't do a production grid for that. These are for shows or movies that are being worked on in some way. Now, just to give you an example of how far out something like this might be, if you remember back in December when Ryan Reynolds went on a talk show and he said that they are at Marvel working on Deadpool right now.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right when he did that, a production grid was out there for Deadpool, listing that Deadpool is being worked on at Marvel Studios with Feige and Ryan Reynolds as a producer. So if that was in December, Deadpool could be maybe 2022, 2023. This could be maybe within the same year or two from that. So
Understood. And I just recall, like, when I looked at the scoop that you did, you had sort of mentioned a couple other scoops that you had gotten before. One of them was the Hawkeye scoop. And I just kind of got a sense that you were doing that because this was in that same vein. Like, you feel pretty confident with this.
Yeah, because it was, what happened is the grid popped up, and myself and a couple other sources were working on. We're trying to figure out, okay, so what is this? How's this fit? Then I checked another source, and I checked with them, and then the light bulb went off with what they came back on. And then we can go in. That's what made it sound like it's not just some, characters appearing in a show. It's more like an event that's planning, and we'll get into that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's, exactly where I want to go, man, because I'm quite frankly pumped. So okay. Let's just get into sort of the thank you for explaining that too. I think that'll really help people. So my first big question here, and we'll go through some of the questions, and then there were some people on our Discord that had a few fan questions, which I'd like to throw at you as well, if that's okay. So I'm kind of having trouble wrapping my head around how this fits into what we think we know is going to happen in phase 4 and 5. And a lot of this does come actually from you and from other scoopers out there, and just sort of the framework that I have in my brain for phase 4 and 5. And so do you think that this is a relatively new plan from Marvel Studios? And do you think that things in the MCU are changing, or is this just sort of a reveal of maybe something that we weren't aware of?
I think this is a reveal of something we weren't aware of. I think this might be a way for them to start dealing with characters like the Fantastic Four. The comic original was heavily into heavily Fantastic Four X-Men type storyline. So I think this is, a lot of people have been speculating, how are they going to use Fantastic Four? How are they going to use maybe X-Men? I don't know if they would do X-Men this early, but this could be a way to introduce Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four and have a big event. Now, for a long time, there has been a rumor floating around behind the scenes that there would be some kind of big team up prior to the next Avengers movie. Some people were speculating that it could be Captain Marvel 2. Now, Captain Marvel 2 is apparently going to, set the status quo for the next Avengers movie, but it might not be a big like team up type movie. This could be that big team up that would hit right before the next Avengers movie, and it could be a way to, like I said, put Fantastic Four on a big stage because they are, Feige at Comic-Con said they're going to be done in the way they deserve, with the respect it's Stan Lee's first creation. It's their first family. So I think he wants to treat them. And it doesn't sound like Feige doesn't like to repeat the past. He doesn't like to redo things Fox did. So this would be a way for them to introduce Fantastic Four and Doom and have Doom be the manipulative genius, greatest villain in the Marvel universe he is in a big way to put him on a big stage and really, hammer home. Nice. These are important characters.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. And you're really speaking my language because I think that particularly the fact that it's would be so different. I mean, if it does end up, utilizing Magneto and utilizing Doom in that way.
I'm not so sure if they would do Magneto this early. They could. I think this would be probably more Fantastic Four focused. Now, like a lot of and we'll get to it. A lot of people are, you say Ultimatum and people want to jump out the window. But like Age of Ultron, that was nothing like the comic.
Correct, yep.
Civil War. Now, the comic of Civil War was Marvel's like best-selling trade paperback for a decade. But come on, that comic wasn't the greatest, and it kind of ruined Tony Stark in the comics for a decade.
Yeah,
the movie was so much better. Yeah. Likewise, Infinity War is very, very different than Infinity Gauntlet. Infinity Gauntlet in the comics, the snaps resolved in like 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So they take the titles and they take inspiration and they use the titles, but they go in a complete different direction in the MCU. It's its own thing. So I don't think this will be what people are fearing.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, let's just go right there then, man, because I was really shocked at some of your contemporaries and their straight up contempt for this story.
You can't blame them.
No, okay, so let's ask that then. So what are you of that mind too that you thought Ultimatum was a pretty lackluster story? And then again, kind of getting into how you think that Marvel might change it, because I said something earlier today we did a live stream earlier, and I said, if you've got a list of stories that are involving all of these different characters, this is not one I think that many people would reach for. However, as you kind of spoke to, that might have been the rationale because it's so different than what comic book fans might expect and what Fox did. So I kind of feel like you go for it because it is that. But first of all, did you like Ultimatum? Did you find any redeeming qualities in the book itself? Or
I'm a huge David Finch fan. I love David Finch's art. I mean, not just his Marvel, so like his stuff on Moon Knight, but his DC, his Wonder Woman DC was probably one of my favorite runs on Wonder Woman recently. Yeah. I love David Finch's art. So yeah, but I'm not a huge fan of Jeff Loeb. There was a great comic in the 80s called Jeff Hemback Destroys the Marvel Universe. Now, I've actually checked. It's not available on Comixology. So in order to be, you have to go hunt down your local comic shop for a back issue or look on the darkest corners of the internet. It was a humorous comic in the 80s where every member of the Marvel Universe was killed in funny ways. My favorite is Ant-Man, who gets doused in water, lands on a little old lady's doorstep. She comes and says, "Oh, look, I'll dry you off. Here, I'll put you in the microwave." And you see pop. It's hilarious. I think maybe Jeff Loeb might have read that and had it in the back of his head and said, "Hey, let's do this seriously with a lot of blood and gore in the Ultimate Universe." And I think
like when the blob's like eating wasp and stuff.
Doctor Strange's head popping from being strangled by his own clothes. I mean, Yeah, it's not going to be that. I mean,
Yeah.
people are thinking, "Oh, it's going to be terrible. They're going to kill Scarlet Witch." No, but there could be, inspiration for that because, yeah, I believe if I remember correctly, there was an interview somewhere where Lizzie Olsen did mention that like House of M would be like the type of storyline she'd like to see. They could do a type of House of M type thing. So like, say she believes her kids in WandaVision are killed and she goes nuts. Maybe who knows? After instead of being Magneto, she could be like, it's going to make the Scarlet Witch stands match. She could be the villain, but of course she'd be redeemed in the end. I mean, she'd come back to the good side, but Wanda does go nuts in the comic, and she goes crazy when things go bad. So who knows? It could be Wanda could be the replacement for Magneto, and we could learn maybe Doctor Doom has been pulling strings behind the scenes through the beginning of Phase 4. I mean, they want to set him up in some way, and that'd be a cool way to do it.
Yeah, I was always a fan of the Ultimates universe just because of how bold it was, and I liked how when characters died, at least at first, they would stay dead. And I actually didn't mind Ultimatum, but I'm kind of one of those guys. I mean, I kind of like bad movies and stuff like that. Like I'm in for a good time and enjoying it and stuff. I mean, it's obviously not freaking Watchmen, but it's like I thought it was passable as a story, but I did find it really interesting, man. Like people came out of the woodwork.
Yeah, they don't like that. It's like that and the whole Norman Osborn, Gwen Stacy thing. If you know what I'm talking about, those things really draw people out of the woodwork. Like, no, because there's or One More Day, Brand New Day, whatever.
Yeah.
Those sort of things really pull people out of the woodwork. Because there's been some bad comic storylines. I think Feige's smart enough to not do something like that. There's been 23 movies, 11 years, more than 11 years. I think we should trust him enough to do good with the titles because, like Secret Wars, I mean, you can't get to Secret Wars without the Fox characters.
Right.
So you're going to need to get these Fox characters in there in some ways before you get to that. But even then, Secret Wars is, which one are you going to do? Are you going to do the one from the 80s, which was made just to sell toys?
Right.
Or are you going to do the awesome Hickman one, with God Emperor Doom? So there will be like titles used, but new stories applied to that. Age of Ultron in the movies is nothing like the Age of Ultron comic at all. Nothing at all.
Like it.
Endgame.
I actually like that Age of Ultron comic though. I like when you start out and every I just remember isn't it like Red Hulk and some other people are almost like it's like Mad Max and they're almost like a band of scavengers.
And you have the whole Invisible Woman Wolverine time travel subplot and stuff. I really like that. But Endgame is actually more like Age of Ultron.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so they take inspiration. They can pull like strands. And in this, when I checked with one person on this, it sounds like there will be quite a few tweaks to this. So it's not going to be
probably a fair. Yeah, that's probably a fair statement.
They will always tweak things.
Yeah. So next question. We've sort of already kind of talked about it a little bit, but obviously, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer when you think about the fact that, and I'm kind of hearing that you're thinking the X-Men might not be heavily involved with this, and I'd like to explore that more. But when I first heard the scoop and I just kind of took it in, which was like last night, I was talking with people here at the channel, and I was really into it. I was like, well, what a better way to bring in the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. These are properties we know Marvel now has, right? Mm-hmm. So what an interesting way to tie them all together. Do you think that could have been part of the rationale? Like Feige basically is almost looking through the bins or, his long box of dollar comics and stuff and kind of being like, well, what story do we have that ties all of these groups together? Do you think that's possibly a reason why this was picked?
I mean, there's been a lot of murmurs going around about Fantastic Four recently, so I think Fantastic Four would be more of a focus. But yeah, it would absolutely be a way to like introduce mutants on a big stage.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be like the thing that brings the X-Men out of hiding, so to speak, It's like, where have they been? They're out in Krakoa and they're coming to fight with this big team up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. And those characters, Feige has a big toy box now. And
yes, he does. Yeah.
And the funny thing is you're seeing, and people are like, why are they doing this? Like there's a Whiz Kid who is in Shang-Chi.
Right.
And people are like, why are they doing that? Well, they have all these obscure characters who are tied to mutants, And that's a cool way to start to introduce the concept of mutants with these characters. Like, well, why aren't you doing Wolverine first? Well, because you want to save those for, you know, down the road. You don't want to come out with your heavy hitter right away when you don't have to. I mean, Marvel could just sit back and throw these no-name mutants out and then eventually bring in the X-Men.
Yeah, and we'll still nerd out for it super hard. That's the thing.
They don't need to come and have Wolverine jump out of a portal in Endgame for people to get excited, because they have that built up already. They don't need that. Like Fox needed Wolverine to be basically the leader of the X-Men in their movies, because that's all they really had. Marvel they have their whole universe, so they can treat them the way they should be treated.
Right. Now, just to kind of circle back to the X-Men thing. So I'm kind of hearing that what you're saying is, because more of the buzz from behind the scenes is about Fantastic Four, you're assuming, because you think this is a plan that is newly discovered but not newly created, that's kind of the connection that you think there. So by that logic, do you think that there's sort of a lack of X-Men buzz over there? You kind of think they're going to go, okay.
No. I there's apparently something going on with X-Men, maybe on Disney Plus, maybe like animated, not live action. But no, they're starting. Okay. So Marvel has the rights to everything now. For a long time, their hands were tied. They could not say in the movies. They could not say the Savage Land. They could not say Madripoor. They could not say the word mutant. They could not use that world building for a long time. But they are going to start using that as early as Falcon and Winter Soldier. We know there's plans in some way to use Khazar. Maybe that's going to be in Eternals, but they're going to start world building. I mean, even swords in WandaVision. They couldn't use sword for a long time because that was created by Joss Whedon in his Astonishing X-Men run.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't know that.
They're starting to be able to use these world building things that were mutant exclusive, Fox exclusive for a long time. So we're starting to see that. It's just like, I don't think you're going to see Wolverine, jumping on the screen in, Black Widow or Eternals, or maybe even Doctor Strange anytime soon. They're going to build to the mutants more, and they're going to be awesome when they get there. But remember, when the Fox purchase happened, Feige said they're not part of the 5-year plan they're working off of.
This is true. Yeah.
So it's going to be, we would see Fantastic Four first, because it has been several years since Josh Trank's movie. Yeah. So it's more than enough time for a Fantastic Four reboot. They're still reeling from the biggest bomb of 2019, which was Dark Phoenix.
Right.
So it's going to be probably maybe a little bit separated between Fantastic Four and X-Men. Fantastic Four will probably be first, and then we'll get into the X-Men. But that doesn't mean we won't see mutants, but we won't see the big names for a little while.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. Next question is just about, with some of these other things, like we're talking about Dark Avengers and Secret Wars, those are kind of big things that we think are on the horizon. How do you think Ultimatum ties into that? I mean, have you given any thought on that? Has anybody said anything? Like, what do you think when it comes to that?
Well, one thing with Dark Avengers, we haven't heard too much about the actual Dark Avengers. I think that might have evolved into Thunderbolts.
Right.
But that would probably... Thunderbolts, it sounds like that might be a little bit further along, so this would be after that. This from just the way you see these production grids and this talk of development going on, it sounds like this could be between whatever Thunderbolts is going to be and whatever the New Avengers will be. And I think, I'm just guessing, New Avengers will be the May 2024 movie.
Now, do you think the New Avengers would maybe potentially spin out of something that happens in Ultimatum, and we'll have?
Yeah, I think everything's building towards that. Like, you'll have, on one hand, you'll have stuff like Captain Marvel setting up more like maybe a cosmic status quo that leads into New Avengers, which would be 2 years before New Avengers, just like Civil War was 2 years before Infinity War. And then whatever this Ultimatum is, if it's in like 2023, it'd be the year before and could lead directly into it. Just be almost a cliffhanger maybe.
And then do you think Secret Wars after that then?
That would have to be farther down the line. You need the Fantastic Four, you need the X-Men, you need everyone. I mean, that needs to be bigger than Endgame, That's more characters on screen than Endgame. So that's more like building up down the line to that. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that would be super cool. Just one more quick question, and then we'll just grab a couple from the fans on Discord. So also we sort of talked about this already as well, but Ultimatum kills off a lot of characters. In my head, I was thinking, what if the maniacal Feige is looking at these contracts, doing the math on how much money Benedict Cumberbatch is going to start making after a said time. And he's like, well, we'll put Ultimatum right here and we will end a lot of these characters. You think he's killing a lot of people off or no?
No, I don't think he's doing that. And I don't think he will ever kill. Well, I'm not going to say ever, but I think Doctor Strange will be on the bottom of the list to kill, because I remember comments like that's his favorite character. So
really?
Yeah. And there's been talk like Doctor Strange is meant to be like kind of like the new Tony Stark, where you have Captain Marvel like maybe leading the Avengers and be the forefront of MCU, but he's the type of character who can appear in any movie because he could just teleport. So yeah, I don't think that Doctor Strange would be on his list to kill. And no, I don't think this would be something to kill a bunch of characters. That would be Secret Wars. I mean, like the end of thing, and like that's when the contracts are really done, and it'd be like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. The last time we see that could be like the last time we see Captain Marvel, or last time we see Black Panther, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair stuff. Let me take a peek over here at Discord. Okay, let's ask about Namor. Seems to be a couple of questions about Namor. Namor was involved in Ultimatum in the comic books. Again, something that we know is coming to the MCU. What do you think about that? And how do you think he'll be involved in Ultimatum, or just in general? Any Namor thoughts or ideas?
I think if he is going to pop up in Black Panther 2, I very much doubt he'd be the type of villain that they would kill off. So he would be someone who would, he's not even a villain. He's more of like, not so much even an anti-hero. He's a pest, a pest, but you need to have Namor around when you get, I mean, people who read Fantastic Four know you need to have Namor around when you get to Sue Storm.
Yeah,
you have to have that. So if it has a Fantastic Four and they've established Namor in Black Panther 2, I could absolutely see him being in there in some way.
A little bit
that could be the way he meets Sue Storm. Who knows?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of rumorage that Victor Von Doom could potentially be involved in Black Panther 2 as well. There could be a really interesting thing going on with those two characters. I find Namor important to, time runs out, and even in Secret Wars, and that relationship he has with T'Challa was a cool aspect of it. Although I don't think it actually gets paid off very well in the actual Secret Wars book.
Yeah.
But the lead up to it was fascinating, with those two at each other's throats.
That just reminds me that, Tony Stark's dead, and we now can finally have the Illuminati, but one of the key members is dead. So,
right. Well, I recently did a video about that where I thought, it would be great if Tony, even though he's dead, was the one to still assemble the Illuminati. Perhaps like he did a recording just like he did for his family, but this one's for Steven. Right. Yeah. Where he's like, yo, Doc Strange, we barely knew each other, but I trust you to do this. You know what I mean? Which would be pretty cool. Well, we sort of talked about this one, but I'll throw it up there just because Jason is a good dude. He said, what does he think about the risks of adapting a less than well-received comic book run? Could a move like that doom a project from the start, or will it be overcome? So we sort of spoke to this already.
Yeah, but, I think people go into it thinking, oh, it's going to be this horrible thing. Like, I don't know if people went into Civil War worried it's going to turn Tony Stark into a villain for a decade. I mean, the movie, but there might have been people who were, but then they see the movie, it's like, oh yeah, they did it. They did it better than the comics.
And I agree with you too.
I think for the most part, I have a friend who doesn't read comics anymore. The movies are his comics now because of things like Civil War and Ultimatum, he got turned off comics, but the movies are being done so much better. He just watches that to get his fix. So Feige has had a stellar track record, so I don't think he would stumble this time by doing something really dumb like Jeff Loeb did. And in a way, I was kind of thinking, is this in my back of my mind, is like, this would be like the ultimate goodbye Jeff Loeb move, where Jeff Loeb's gone. I mean, Feige now controls the TV stuff, and now he's going to take probably one of Jeff Loeb's most hated stories and do it fantastically on the big screen. I mean, just turn it on its head.
Brought that up. I always talk about this. I always talk about how Feige is a low-key gangster, and like some of the underhanded stuff that he does to like DC. And I got to be honest with you, even though Scott Derrickson has really impressed me with how tactful and gentlemanly he's been about the whole situation, I did kind of feel like it was a power move to replace him with Sam Raimi. I mean, it's kind of a power move.
Feige's been friends with Sam Raimi for, since the first Spider-Man. He was like an associate producer, or he's like an assistant on the first one, but he was much more involved in Spider-Man 2 and 3. So he's been friends with Sam Raimi for years. So I see the thing where Derrickson had to leave. I see Feige, because Sam Raimi hasn't directed a movie in more than 4 years. The last movie he directed was for Disney. It was the Oz the Great and Powerful. Okay. And it was more like he's calling up his friends like, hey, you want to make a Marvel movie?
Yeah.
We have Doctor Strange. And that could even lead to something bigger. There's been rumors floating around that he might want to set up a Raimi Spider-Man reunion by offering him New Avengers. But that's way far down the line.
Yeah.
Who knows if that would even happen? But that's a cool idea. Like, hey, set up this reunion with Spider-Man and have him do New Avengers.
Okay, so this is kind of an interesting question that Trev asks. He says, are they setting up the planet to be in a disarray for someone to come in and take the reins? If so, who do you think that is? Now, I've sort of speculated that this is sort of why I'm so on Dark Avengers and why I'm so fixated on this is because it's not parallel to what was going on in the comics, but it's similar in tone where it's like there's been so much crazy shit that happened that they're looking for security. They're willing to give up freedom for security.
And that was a big part of Spider-Man Far From Home. There's no Avengers. Who's going to be the new leader? Who's going to come take the lead? I think they are kind of setting something up that for someone to come who may not have the best motives to come and pretend to be a great leader and then have a team of supervillains smashing up New Asgard.
Yeah, man, that's it. We're going to rain. You know what I mean? So you just come in, and I want the Sentry real bad.
As soon as they put New Asgard on Earth, I'm like, yeah, that's Siege. That's just a big, huge target right there for Siege.
100%.
Especially you saw the concept art that Taika showed on his Instagram where it's more built up and it looks more like Asgard. Like, yeah, that's just a big target right there.
100%. Last question is, so, when I was looking at the way that the MCU has delayed their films and something really weird to me was like, it seems as though they've literally given spots. Disney bought or claimed spots of release dates. They literally gave them to Sony Pictures. You know what I mean? Like Into the Spider-Verse 2 got a Marvel date. Spider-Man 3 gets a Marvel date. What do you think that means? Like, we know very little about the actual arrangement between Sony and Marvel now, other than it seems to be good. What do you? I've
asked someone there, and I think I said this on my podcast this weekend. I asked someone there about there being more cooperation beyond just the Spider-Man movie, and they laughed. Like people had a theory that Spider-Woman could be a Marvel Studios movie that Sony's making or something like that, and they laughed at it. I think it's more those needed. I mean, like they don't want Sony getting mad and taking Spider-Man back. So if they needed to delay Spider-Man and they're like, okay, here you have Doctor Strange, we'll bump Doctor Strange, and that gives Sam Raimi more time to work on the movie.
Yeah.
So that gives him a lot more time to make it more Sam Raimi. I'm thinking, come on, Doctor Strange, it has to be Darkman. I mean, Darkman was the perfect melding between horror and a superhero movie. So I'm hoping we're going to get another Darkman from Sam Raimi with Multiverse of Madness, and this would give him more time to kind of, and I'm sure Feige would allow him to do it because they're friends, to kind of mold it into his thing. I think it was just more of a convenience thing where it's like, okay, so if Spider-Man needs to move, then that will give us more time with Doctor Strange. As for that October date that the Spider-Verse landed on, it's still, as of right now, it's still on the schedule. I check every day. They're going to update that hopefully this week. It usually takes them about a week or two to update their official. They have a PDF schedule. So I check that every day. So as soon as they update that, if it's still on that schedule, then they're sitting on that date still. So we'll have to see. But that should be hopefully within with this week or next week, they'll update that and we'll see if that's still on there.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense to me because I'm like, where's the leverage? Like, I don't understand. It feels like Marvel really is acquiescing to Sony a lot. At least that's my perception. And I'm like, where's the leverage? What are they getting? Like,
they get Spider-Man in the MCU.
Right. Well,
they get Spider-Man and New Avengers. I mean, a happy Sony keeps Spider-Man in the MCU. If they, that's why you're going to see stuff like in Morbius and Venom 2. You'll see Spider-Man references in there. You'll see Vulture in Morbius and stuff. Sony, that's what Sony wanted. They want to kind of like force their stuff into the MCU.
Right.
So they're going to like, okay, you can reference the events of Spider-Man in your movies. You can have these characters in your movies. If that keeps you happy and you let us have Spider-Man, then yeah, they don't really care. And I think Feige also realized that people are smart enough to realize that's Sony's universe. It's referencing the Spider-Man stuff, but it's not officially part of the MCU, and that you probably won't see Morbius and Venom popping up in Secret Wars, at least right away.
Right.
You know?
Do you think he maybe got Norman as well? Like, could that have been a little sweetener on the deal?
That could have been it, because I know
that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Like when I did my take on it, I said obviously more Spider-Man than just the 2 movies. That's something that is obvious that Feige would want, but also Norman. I think they still really want Norman.
Yeah, exactly. And they do things like that for Marvel. Where I don't know if you remember. Originally, the Kraven movie that I think they're still planning, the Kraven movie was going to be a Kraven Mysterio movie. Oh. But then they wanted to use Mysterio in Far From Home, so they changed it and they took Mysterio out of that plan. And even before then, they had the Silver and Black movie. A script for that, the original script leaked. The villain in that movie was Norman Osborn. But then at one point that was changed. Norman was taken out and they split it into 2 separate things. Now it's a TV series or something, but that's happened in the past where they will take a character like Norman or Mysterio, let Marvel use it and alter their plans around it. Because I think it's more like Sony really wants their stuff tied to the MCU, because there was a report that just came out, and this kind of kills a lot of the Iron Boy Jr. fans who blame Marvel for Tony Stark being so close to Spider-Man. Yeah. The report came out and said that no, Sony was the one who wanted Iron Man in the Spider-Man movies, and that Marvel originally didn't want him that connected to Spider-Man. So it was Sony who wanted that, because they want that connection to Marvel.
Dude, I know a few of my fans that are going to be really excited to hear you say that, because there's this whole I know you know this, but there's a whole contingent of fans that hate the Iron Man Spider-Man thing, you know. But
I think that's kind of like what they were trying to do with Far From Home. Like Marvel really didn't want that connection, and like Far From Home was like really getting rid of that connection, saying you got to come out of that shadow and be your own Spider-Man, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Last question, man, is just where can people find your stuff, and how can people support you? I know things are crazy right now. I know you have a Patreon. Yep. Plug away.
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter at Manabyte, Manabyte. The website is mcucosmic.com. The weekly podcast is MCU Cosmic Cast. Now, I do have a Patreon for people on the Patreon, and also on the YouTube channel. There's links to the Patreon and the YouTube channel right there on the front page of MCU Cosmic. Patreon, or you can do a membership on YouTube. They get the podcast Saturdays. Everyone else waits till the middle of the week to get the podcast. So if you want the podcast right away with the latest news before things might have become old, you can support the site via the Patreon or membership on YouTube. And like I said, there's links right there on the front page to both Patreon and the YouTube channel, and all the social media channels right there on mcucosmic.com.
Sounds good. I hope people check it out. Jeremy does great work. I've been saying your name on my channel for like 2 years, so I appreciate you coming on here and clarifying the scoop. I think people will find this really interesting, so thanks a lot, man.
Oh, anytime. Thanks.
Okay, so pretty crazy stuff. A lot of interesting things that Jeremy brings up in this interview. I want to know what you think about all of this, so let us know your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. And now let's shout out Mason Edwards. Yes, indeed, it is Flash Thompson from Peter Parker's high school that ends up becoming Venom later on in the comic books. So shout out to you, Mason Edwards. And if you notice, Jeremy actually goes into the second part of your comment. A little bit of that question was answered in this video. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to test your knowledge of other Ultimates Marvel storylines. I want to know, what is the name of the big crossover event that saw the Galactus from the 616 universe go into the Ultimates universe? What was the name of that comic book run? Answer that question in the comment section below. If you absolutely need more nerdy content in your life, click or tap over there to get lost down a rabbit hole on some of our other content. Like this video if you liked it. If you want to take your support to the next level and join the list of awesome people you see below, check out our Patreon for some behind-the-scenes content. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.